Decline and fall. By now, though, the Roman imperial machine wasn't in a particularly good state to compel anyone to do anything. Italy in 401 had something in common with modern-day Reading. In the summer, a lot of Goths came to have a good time. Admittedly, these were more the hairy, sword-wielding, blood and violence kind of Goths than the black eyeliner-wearing soft-rockers. But to be fair to King Alaric the Visigoth, he and his people were just seeking a place to call home, and they quite fancied Italy. It would have been possible to accommodate them quite easily, but the Emperor of the West at the time was a dimwit called Honorius, who was more interested in raising poultry. When Alaric first besieged Rome in 408, Honorius decided the best course of action was to hide in a marsh. It was left to Pope Innocent, the Bishop of Rome, to negotiate with Alaric. In the end, Alaric made his demand: large quantities of gold and silver, and also 3,000 pounds of pepper. Perhaps he was working on a really big steak au poivre. Thanks to the negotiating skills of the Pope, his demands were met, and when the Visigoths had entered Rome, they did not attack church property. He might not have attacked it anyway, because Alaric was a Christian, albeit an Arian. But nature abhors a vacuum, especially if that vacuum is called Honorius, and in the absence of strong leadership, it was up to the next Bishop of Rome to step in. Innocent I, 401 to 417, was in fact a generally good egg. He has been called the first really great pope. He was a man of high ability and impeccable morality, and he was determined to preserve the status and power of the papacy as best he could. As part of this, he proclaimed that all matters discussed at synods should come to him for a final decision, a proclamation completely ignored in the East, where they still had an emperor for that sort of thing. In 410, though, the Goths attacked again, and this time they were not to be bought off with gold, silver, and large quantities of seasoning. In an event that sent shockwaves through the empire, the Goths took over Rome. "If Rome can fall," wrote Jerome from distant Bethlehem, "what can be safe?" Back to Hippo. Well, North Africa for one. Or safer, at any rate, and thousands of Romans fled across the Mediterranean to Hippo, where Augustine had the unenviable task of holding them together, cheering them up, and providing them with answers. He did so in his masterwork, The City of God. It took him 13 years to write, and is an attempt to place the sack of Rome in a much wider cosmic context. In the book, Augustine imagines two metaphorical cities, one on earth and one in heaven. These two kingdoms are entangled, enmeshed, sometimes even at war with each other. Christians needed to grasp that they were not citizens of the earthly city, but of the heavenly one. Rome was great, but it was a city of man, and any peace and happiness found there was therefore transitory. In contrast, the city of God possesses peace by faith, and by this faith it lives. But if Rome was the earthly city, where was the heavenly city to be found? Augustine sometimes seems to identify it with the church. Certainly over the next 1,000 years, that's how the medieval church saw it. They were always happy to equate their opponents with the citizens of the earthly city. Augustine argued that believers are saved by grace through faith in Jesus Christ, but that such grace can be found only within the church. But who made up the church? Augustine developed the idea of the invisible church. Not all within the visible church are Christians. Only God knows truly who is or who isn't. And he knows all who will become a Christian because they have been called by God before all of time. "Many who seem to be outside the church are really inside," he said, "and many who seem to be inside are really outside." It's only in retrospect, therefore, that we shall know who the true church was. This is not a blanket inclusion. There are some people who are obviously not chosen. But we can't just exclude people from the church because they seem to be horrendous sinners. In Augustine's theology, we're all born sinners. That, in turn, is why you have to baptize babies. And that is why, in Catholic and mainline Protestant theology, everyone is born into the church. He also had a very Western take on the Trinity. He used the analogy of the human mind, dividing its three activities of memory, understanding, and will, or love. Different tasks, but one mind doing all of them. He almost seemed, though, to relegate the Spirit to third place. In the Eastern creeds, the Spirit proceeded from the Father, but Augustine talked of the Spirit proceeding from the Father and the Son. It may not sound like much, but it was going to cause a lot of rows later on.